there's an intro. Welcome to the Draft Professor, everybody. My name is Jim. I'm joined today by Matt, Raj, Steve, and Taylor. We are going to be discussing the tight ends. And ironically, I think this is only the second tight end podcast that this channel has done since December. So, Taylor, is Kenyon Sadiq your tight end one? And how big of a gap is it between Sadiq and who's ever next?
Yeah, I mean, he's my tight end one for sure. I think the thing for me is I don't know if he's inside my top 20 in the whole class, but I do think he's well above most of the other tight ends on the list. I just think his athleticism is unmatched. It's something we haven't really seen at the tight end position. I know his size isn't necessarily the most ideal, but he's a physical blocker, and he really, he's not afraid to stick his nose in there and battle, and I appreciate that. He's only going to get better with technique in the NFL, with coaching. I just think the athleticism, you can't overlook that. It's really out of this world. And I kind of have a comp for him. It's a little bit of Sam Laporta, a little bit of Jonnu Smith. And I think that, I think that's not a bad thing. I'm not sure I can get in the mindset of wanting to get that in the top 10. But I think he falls to the mid of the first round. But yeah, he's a pretty considerable gap ahead of my tight end too. What about you, Matt?
Yeah, I think I got the same thing going. Sadiq's the best athlete at tight end in the draft. The highest ceiling it's not even close. There's no tight end in this class that moves like him. So as a pass catcher, we're talking about the best guy you're going to get. Almost can be used as a big slot at times, but he definitely has the ability to play in line. Maybe not the best in the draft at that, but his upside as a receiver is better. I do not have him in my top 20. I have him at the bottom of the first round. I have seen people in my own Chiefs fan base suggest that we take him at 9, and I will not be heard from for a long time if that happens. So
I saw one of those tweets today.
Don't even get me started, man. Not happening. But maybe at 29 if he's there, but no thanks. So yeah, I have a considerable gap, probably 25 picks between him and the next tight end on my board. So yeah, I think we can go around. I think everybody will have him probably at the top.
Yeah, Raj, who is your tight end one? Is it Sadiq?
Yeah, Sadiq's my tight end one by a bit. I really like his game. He's going to hover around my top 15 until I finalize that order. Right now he's at 14. But when you look at him, I mean, everybody said it, such an explosive athlete, offers so much receiving upside. But where he matured, I think, a lot from last year from summer scouting was that his routes have gotten a lot sharper and his route tree has gotten a lot more developed from where he was last year. So just continuing to see that upward progression. He's not the best blocker, but he gives effort and he's physical. And as Taylor said, like with more technique and NFL coaching, I think he'll get to a point where he's definitely passable in that respect. I think from him to my tight end 2 is the biggest gap between like a player 1 and a player 2 in terms of position on my big board.
Steve, what do you think?
Yeah, I actually have him as the 23rd ranked player on my board. He is tight end 1. I would have no problem, though, if the Jets would take him at 16 if a couple of the receivers are gone, because I don't want Ty Simpson. I've heard Ty Simpson doesn't have the bend around the bags the way Ruben Bay does. So that's why I don't want him, because that's been a big debate. But, I'm from a generation where, you didn't even consider a tight end if he was like shorter than 6'5", 6'6", right? And, and that has changed over the years. But so, we call him a tight end because that's the position. But I think it was Matt who said about being a big slot. And yeah, I don't care what you want to call him. He's just a weapon. He's a seam stretcher. Just let me throw him in a lineup against some man coverage and just watch him eat. So, but yeah, there is a tremendous gap that I have between Sadiq and next. I do not have any other tight end going until I guess it would be the 3rd round.
Yeah, I'm there with you.
Pretty big gap.
Yeah.
So does anybody have a small gap between their tight end 1 and their tight end 2? Or is it pretty much round 1, round 3?
My closest guy is about 20 picks.
Yeah, I think I have Eli Stowers, and he's my number 2 tight end, and I have him in round 2, late round 2.
Okay. So
Yeah, I
Taylor,
got
what do you like about Stowers enough that you would draft him in round 2?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that he is extremely savvy in his route running. I think he clears out space, especially in zone, and I think he works well and has a good feel for soft spots. I think he can get up the seam quickly. I mean, you saw him test his athleticism. I know we talked about Sadiq's being a freak athlete, but Eli Stowers is no slouch, right? And I think the big debate with him is whether or not he has a position in the NFL. I actually just think he is one of those guys that can come in and maybe work similarly to Trey McBride or Brock Bowers, where that's pretty much all they're going to do. They're not really going to be on the field for run blocking as much as some of these other tight ends. But as far as his athleticism goes, I like that he can get involved in the screen game as well. It's just a unique element to the tight end room that you don't really see. Again, kind of pointing him almost more towards a receiver in my mind, which I think is what he has to be in the NFL to have success. But I think his upside is athleticism. He's got the good size. He has production. So all of that kind of adding up, I have him as a second-ranked tight end. It's not necessarily my job to figure out how to deploy him as a weapon, but I think he is a weapon, and I think a smart NFL coach will figure out how to do that.
I love
So,
guys who used to play quarterback, and Stowers was a 4-star quarterback coming out of high school. So that definitely shows up when he finds those soft spots of the zone. It definitely matters. 240 is mildly concerning to me for somebody who's 6'4". I'd like to see him put on a little more weight and improve as a blocker, but there's no doubt in his ability to be a receiver. He's the perfect like bailout, check down option, make play with the ball in your hand. So I like him a lot. My tight end 2 is Sam Roush from Stanford. I have him in my top 50. He's the only other tight end I have in my top 50. And I think a big part of that is, and maybe it doesn't make us all look good, but this draft is just not as good as years past. And I mean, very blunt with it. Like, this isn't a great draft as compared to the other ones. So players that may have had a 3rd or even 4th round grade last year are very likely going to go in the 2nd round this year. I think Sam Roush isn't one of those like light it up, become a superstar type of players. But if your team needs a tight end, Sam Roush is an NFL tight end. I guarantee you he's an NFL tight end. He's one of the safest picks that you're going to get in the draft. I mean, 6'6", 260. He's a straight up inline blocker. He is a really good leak out, make catch in space, get you a couple of yards, reliable hands, all the things that you look for in a tight end. And that's something that's so valuable at tight end, is just simply being consistent and being reliable for your quarterback, for your team in general. I think Sam Roush brings that. So again, I don't know that when you pick him, you're looking for him to be the focal point of your offense. But if you're a team that already, like maybe you're the Bengals and you already have 2 great wide receivers, Sam Roush just makes everybody on the offense better.
Yeah, Roush I have down as my tight end 4, I think. Yeah. But don't you look at him and he just screams Stanford, right? With just how smart he is, and I mean, obviously a lot of people got turned on to him with the combine, but you look at his bloodlines, right? His dad was in the NFL. He knows what the pro game's all about. I think his pass protection is really good. I just see, JT posting in the comments that he's a mauling blocker. I agree with that. And you look, 0 pressures allowed, when he's up there, it's solid, but he's my 4. I'm going to dial it back and want your guys' take, because my tight end number 2 may surprise some of y'all, and I blame Taylor for this. I'll explain why in a minute. But my tight end 2 is Michael Trigg of Baylor. And like I said, I blame Taylor for that, because when he and I started this, I don't know, whatever it was, months ago, and Taylor, forced me to take another look and see something with Sawyer Robertson that I wasn't seeing, and just started watching. I know he's your guy too, Jim. And I just started watching, and man, those guys, he and Drake, peanut butter and jelly. But man, if he could just put it all together, I know that the pro day didn't go well. Looks like, there's an issue with the hamstring, but I just find him explosive off the line, and, just a dangerous dude after the catch. But Raj, who's your tight end 2? And also, what do you think about Michael Trigg?
Yeah, it sounds like we're all going to have different tight end 2s. My tight end 2 is Max Clare, and it's pretty close between him and Stowers, but I really like Clare. I think he's really smart. I think he's just your classic lunch pail, meat and potatoes tight end, where he's going to be able to move the chains for you, haul in short passes, and that I think is a starter for a decade plus. And it's not a great tight end class, and I think I'll take that guy who, I feel he's still kind of developing as a blocker. He's a little small, but I feel like he offers some receiving upside, and he's at least a passable blocker to the point where a team's going to be able to start him, and he'll be a good starter for a decade for a team. But Michael Trigg I like as well. He's down at my tight end 5. But I still like him. He's a good blocker. He moves the chains and he's a good athlete. So I agree with you. Some of the stuff I had with him was downfield separation. I think he was more inconsistent in that regard, and then he was a little light as well.
So,
Yeah, I
Matt,
think-
where are you on Trigg? Because I know that Chris Connor loves him to the Chiefs in round 2, but I haven't heard anybody else on the Chiefs side say Michael Trigg round 2.
No, I would not be happy with that at pick 40, to be honest. That would be frustrating. Maybe if we trade down, but even then, I don't have Trigg quite that high, especially for the Chiefs. The Chiefs love to run a lot of 12 personnel out there. And if they're going to run a big slot, it's going to be Travis Kelce. And we have Kelce for another year. And we're not looking to win in 5 years. We're looking to win tomorrow, next year, this year, as soon as possible. And so I don't know that getting a guy who is I don't love the way Michael Trigg plays in line. And if you're going to move him more outside, I've never once seen Andy Reid push a receiver 6'4" or bigger to make physical catches, because as great of a play caller as he is one stubborn man. And he will not use any receiver that is physical on the outside like that. So I just don't know that that's a great fit, as much as I love what I've seen from Michael Trigg. If you throw it his way, he's bringing it in. His hands are huge. His hands are reliable. He is a very skilled player. So I see it. I just think that you're looking at a very specific fit for a player like him. A coach is going to have to more so work him into their offense. Whereas kind of what I like about Sam Roush is just that you can plug him in. He is an NFL tight end, no matter what team he ends up on. There are 32 teams in the NFL that would like to have Sam Roush on their team tomorrow. So I think the same thing is true with Max Clare, who's my tight end 3. And then I think the next guy on my board would be my tight end 4 that we haven't brought up, is Oscar Delp from Georgia, who I think is a really reliable player. And I think he blew away a lot of people with his athletic testing. Like, a lot of people didn't expect him to be quite as athletic as he was. Kind of similar to like Jacob Rodriguez in that stance, where we watched Oscar Delp play and we're like, well-rounded, pretty consistent player, very just generally talented. He is a pretty reliable blocker on the inside. I think the expectations for him were pretty high because he followed up the performances of Brock Bowers, and there wasn't a man in the world that can follow that up and look great. So I think we saw that he was a reliable player. A lot of people thought that he was just kind of this consistently average tight end, but he tested a lot better than I expected, and that caused me to push him into my top 100.
So does Michael Trigg's off-field issues push him down anybody's board?
I personally don't comment on a player's off-field issues just because I don't know, but I'll let other people go on that.
You're also a Chiefs fan, and it doesn't matter
we can't take more of them, man.
That's a good
I
point.
can't have another
point.
pass catcher on the commissioner's exempt list, dude.
I get it. Yep.
Yeah, on my
that's
board,
fair.
I normally put either a green flag, a dash, which is what most players receive, a yellow flag, or a red flag. With a player like Trigg, I put a yellow flag next to his name, which is, there's some claims, but there's nothing with the police. There's nothing super verified, I guess. So I don't normally push him down on my board, but I think it's important to at least note that if there's some smoke somewhere.
Yeah, it doesn't affect my grading system at all, but good to know. And no, a lot of I heard someone talking about this on a different podcast the other day, but like, we don't even know most of the off the field. We don't get to any input in the interviews or anything. We're only basically watching film and looking at numbers, and any character concerns, like, they're, as they say in corporate America, they're over my head. Like, I can't make that decision because I'm not in the room with these players. I'm not seeing it every day. So it's tough to comment on when you don't have that perspective.
That is exactly right. That's exactly why I don't comment on it. If I was in the interview room, it would wildly impact the way that I evaluate players. I think I would look at interviews as one of the most important things I do as an analyst of draft prospects or as a GM or a scout or any of those things, meeting the players and understanding the type of person that they are would be incredibly important to me. But I can't comment on the things you do off the field. If I haven't met you, I don't know who you are, because I think if people judged me or judged everybody else in the world just off the, two things that go public for them, we all wouldn't like each other very much. So I don't think that it's quite fair to evaluate, Michael Trigg off his worst moment and then evaluate Joe Royer off his best moment or something like that. Just in general, I don't know the people, so that's just my opinion on it. I don't know. I will go back to Taylor, but I don't know who do you have next? Who would be the next guy you'd be?
Yeah, the next guy I have, I actually think this is maybe the same argument for your tight end too, as far as an NFL body, NFL tight end. And he's actually my tight end 3, and that's Eli Raridan out of Notre Dame. So 6'6", 245 pounds. Man, he can move up the seam pretty quick. He had a perfect passer rating on targets 20 yards down the field, 8 catches on 8 targets. So, I mean, he's just a weapon. I think he's better. He's pretty good blocker. He has the ideal frame. He can move around. And, man, when he gets to the, beyond the first level of the defense into the second level, I'm a big fan of his game. And, again, kind of in the Sam Roush thing, we're looking for tight ends that are going to have careers that are going to span multiple years because their size, their build are already NFL ready. And Eli Raridan, to me, is one of those players. So, yeah, I'm a huge fan. I think he's just a big physical athlete that can get down the field, and he holds his own blocking pretty well.
Yeah,
man.
Sticking with Raridan, because I forget what number I have him, but the guy's got a lot of perseverance, because what was it, 2 ACLs that he had, I think, coming in. I know at least one. Yep. But I'm glad you brought him up. I know, Taylor, you're a big Raz guy, so I think he was at a 9.66, I think, if I remember correctly. He tested really well, even with the medicals. My only concern is I think the route tree needs to develop with him a little more. But at the same time, I'll think about the NC State game from 5-6 months ago. He just lit it up for over 100 yards. He had, gorgeous seam catch up there. But
yeah, there was I just watched that game actually today. There was a back-to-back plays where he ate up about 75 yards just on his own, 2 catches in a row, same drive. And I know Michael Trigg has a moment like that too against my K-State Wildcats, but so I get it. But that was
Chalk, Taylor.
Yeah, you're the worst type of fan for me. I'm a Broncos fan and K-State. You're KU and Chiefs. Nah, we don't. Nah. I was glad to see St. John's won. That's all I'll say.
That was painful, man. Eli Raridan, I like him a lot. I liked him a lot earlier in the year. I had him as the top 3 tight end on my board. And then he made me mad when he was listed on the Notre Dame website as 267 pounds. And then he came in at 345. I was like, that was a huge hit on my board for him to lose 22-pound difference compared to what I thought you were when I was watching you was somewhat important. I know guys slim down for the combine, so I imagine he's probably playing closer to 255, 260, which is a good weight for him. And like somebody in the chat said, this class is just loaded with tight end 2s. I think Raridan's one of those guys that comes in and is a great inline guy. Raj, I don't know what you got on him or who your next guy is, but that's
yeah, I mean, I like Raridan. He got better. I watched 4 or 5 games of his. As you get deeper into the season, it felt like he was learning it more, getting better. This is his first season, I think, is a big time contributor. So I like him. I think, like you said, great tight end too. He's a guy I'd probably look at early day 3 on my board. But the next player on my board is Jack Andrews from Texas. He's my tight end 7.
Same.
Yeah, cool. So I like him a bit. I think, again, it's a similar archetype to what I was describing with Max Clare, where he's going to be a safety blanket underneath, just check down threat. He had really good chemistry with Manning, and when Manning was getting in funks, I think he was actually sort of pulling them out. You could see when either, I don't know what was going on with Arch Manning this year, but early in the season, he was kind of missing a lot of throws, and he would hit 2 or 3 underneath to Andrews, and they were on the same page pretty consistently. So he's not an exceptional athlete or blocker, but I think that's a guy who he's going to just get you 3 yards if you need it on 3rd and 2.
Yeah, one thing for sure is, I mentioned when we were talking Sadiq about man coverage, is any of these guys better at identifying soft spots in zone than Endries? I think that's where he just knows how to live. But yeah, good ask.
That was
Taylor,
all over
what do you have
his,
on? Go ahead. I'm sorry.
that was all over his film at Cal, where he was Fernando Mendoza's best friend. I mean, those two were really played well together, and that's kind of where I liked Endries the most. He was pretty reliable at Texas, but man, at Cal was where he really showed up for me. I almost wanted to see him take a bigger step up at Texas, and they didn't get him involved enough.
No, they didn't. When we did summer scouting, I actually had Jack Endries as my tight end 1 early in the process because of how good he was at Cal and anticipating that next step. Like to Matt's point, like I thought if he took that next step, I mean, he was in the conversation up there with Sadiq. And Sadiq had some question marks heading into the season because he hadn't really played. I mean, he hurdled a guy in the college football playoff, but up until that point, he had barely done anything. So I'm a big fan of Endries. He ended as my tight end 8, but in that same realm as some of the guys. I think you guys had him as tight end 7. But yeah, he was a huge volume guy for Cal with Mendoza. And I think it's interesting. He plays about 50-50 outside versus inside. But there's some tape from Cal where he was manhandling Ruben Bain one-on-one in pass pro. And I was like, well, that's kind of impressive. And then, yeah, you guys mentioned the zone stuff. I don't know if there's a tight end that's better at it than Jack Endries. And he has better hands than most of the tight ends in this class too. So I think Endries will go early day 3. I think that's a good spot for him. I think we're going to see a huge run on tight ends from like pick 90 to 140. We might see 10 tight ends go or something crazy.
Yeah,
I can
a lot
definitely
of
see that.
I have
I'm a
early
lot
to
of
mid
grouped
day
in that
3
range.
grades on probably 15 guys, 16 guys.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yep.
And Taylor, I want to go back to something you said about the summer, because I think if there's any position where what we were saying in the summer and then what we know now that's different is the tight end group, right? Like, so most of the conversations about the tight end group over the summer was there was not a clear tight end 1, and it was a relatively weak class relative to the class that we had last year specifically. But to your point, there was a lot of conversation in the chat on this podcast about it's a strong tight end 2 class. And we saw a lot of guys like Raridan or Endries take a step up, and they're still in the conversation, right? Because I think we're going to we've already talked about at least 7 tight ends. And I don't think we're even halfway through the tight end class. So, Matt, who do you have next?
I think this is where I start to kind of like lump a couple guys together. So I'm just going to say the only 2 guys left that I have like early day 3, so like 4th round ish on, would be Dallin Bentley from Utah, who I thought at the Senior Bowl. There's somebody in our chat, I don't know exactly who it was, but we created the Dallin Bentley fan club apparently. So I really like him a lot. The way that one of his catches at the Senior Bowl, I was like, I don't know that many guys who are 260 can climb the ladder quite like that. Reliable hands. I don't know why he didn't play as much last year, which was an odd thing to me. Brent Kuthi played over him.
Wait, you're talking about you're talking about Dallin Bentley. Never mind. But Carson Ryan was at Utah.
Yeah. Brent Kuthi also played over him, who was, needed to go get a job as an insurance agent or something at some point there, because he was on campus for way too long. But Dallin Bentley was sitting behind him. He was a big JUCO guy. Utah has a really good history of developing these JUCO type of players, and Bentley was one of the better receivers in the nation as a tight end. And then the other guy I wanted to mention was Joe Royer, who is the only other guy I have left. Royer's my tight end 6, another just really reliable, find gaps, make catches, average blocker, tight end 2. You just throw him out there in 12 personnel and be comfortable with having him on the field.
Isn't it interesting? We got guys like Dallin Bentley and Joe Royer, even throw in Justin Jolly or Jolie, whatever. You know, these guys all seem to be very polarizing, right?
Yeah.
It seems that within the draft community, not just the draft professors, guys that are, you know, absolutely love them or absolutely refuse to talk about them. Right.
Mhm.
It just seems, but I'm glad you brought up Bentley and Raj. I want your take on him next. But I mean, a 0% drop rate, right? You know, he lacks a little bit of burst, but you know, we're talking a 1 year sample. I mean, the Las Vegas Bowl, the Cal Poly game. I mean, these were awesome. You know, Raj, do you have any thoughts on, you know, Royer or Bentley?
Yeah, I haven't done a ton of Bentley film yet, so that's something he's on my list. But I do like Royer. You know, you look at I think you know what Matt said. Just the tight end too. You throw him out there in 12 personnel, and you're going to feel good about him. He's not separating at a super high level, but he is a decent athlete. I think he rounds off the routes a little bit, but you know, good in the open field. Just a solid presence, I guess, in the tight end room. But one guy I'll throw out that we haven't talked about is Brett Norfleet, who's probably going to be a borderline top 10 tight end for me. He's a big guy. He's like 6'6", 6'7". And I like him a lot for, I think, where he's going to end up being drafted. He's, you know,
Is he
huge.
2020?
Yeah.
Is he this class
Yep.
or next?
I think he
No, I
returned.
thought he
next year.
returned. He returned to
Yeah,
school.
I
thought.
think yeah.
Did he return? Okay, that's my fault.
Yeah.
Guys. Sorry about that.
No worries.
It's okay.
That's
We
all right.
No,
it's like
we're-
once a
we're
podcast
already-
we have something like that come up. I've heard that about Wendell Moe Jr. probably 4 times now.
Yes.
Oh.
Yes.
All right, well,
And
I'm
actually, the
off-
reason that I knew that Norfleet returned to school is I was preparing the summer scouting list and he was on it. And I was like, okay, well, that's a must watch because there were several that had Norfleet as a top 10 tight end entering this season. Right.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
trying to like be able to decipher out of all of these tight ends in college football who's on the must watch list. But
I also don't
carry
know
on,
why
Raj.
he went back to Raj's point that he's a skilled tight end. I think he would have gone higher than.
Yeah, I did.
So-
did
Well,
realize
not to
he
get
went
ahead of
back
the
to
summer
me.
scouting, but I mean, going into it, you know, to drop a little hint for when we start doing it. Right now, he's going to be my tight end too for the summer. I have him behind, you know, the Oregon dude, who I think will light it up. But anyway, staying with 2026.
But you're missing the Georgia guy.
Yeah.
No, I'm not. No, I'm not. We'll get there. We got all summer long.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
have all summer
We'll-
to be going.
We'll
to
talk
that.
about him
But-
eventually.
Yeah.
But Steve, who's the next tight end on your board?
I've actually been going out of order. So yeah, let's see who's next. But I think I brought him up. I touched on it before going to Raj. But yeah, I do want to throw some out there. He's not in my top 10, but I have like Justin Jolie of NC State. You know, typical size, 6'4", I think 250. You know, obviously everybody knows he was the MVP of the Senior Bowl where, you know, he really showcased what he can do in the red zone. The testing obviously was not exactly great. But, you know, I just think he's another guy you're going to put on the field and he's going to be a red zone weapon. I think somebody tweeted it out today. I don't think it was you, Matt, but they're like, I think he's going in for a visit with the Chiefs. And somebody said, oh man, maybe take him in the 4th or 5th round and let him learn behind Travis for a year. But, you know, he had a great game back in October against Pitt, 6 catches, couple of touchdowns, over 100 yards. He won the Mackey Award as tight end of the week. You know, good game against Florida State. I mean, I think the 5 of us could have had a good game against Florida State. But regardless, Taylor, what you got on Jolie?
I have him just outside my top 10. My biggest issue for him is that, you know, he's just kind of a overall, like he's more of a passive lead blocker. Like I'd like to see him be a little bit more decisive in his lead blocking and run blocking specifically. But he is a really good receiver. I just think he measured in at the combine. I know you said 6'4", 250, but he measured in at 6'3", 241. So that's just a little bit undersized on the tight end there for me. personally, but he really can line up all over. He's going to have to line up in the slot in the NFL. He's pretty good at getting vertical, has good hands. But again, to your point, obviously was the MVP of whatever bowl game you said, which definitely matters. I'm joking. But the point is, he did well in the postseason stuff. So I think he's an interesting guy. He's just someone that I don't foresee having in the top 10 because he's not someone that's going to be on the field, consistently. So,
yeah. Brian down there just brought tears to my eyes talking about Jody Fortson. What could have been. I loved that guy. I watched Jody Fortson blow out his Achilles live in person against the Commanders, I think, or the Jaguars. So frustrating. Loved that guy. One of the tight ends that I want to talk about, because I wonder how polarizing he is. We're talking about some of the best tight end twos or blocking tight ends in this class. When I wrote about Cody Hardy from NC State, who is Justin Jolie's teammate, I opened up that with, quote, I want to be crystal clear. Cody Hardy is the single best blocking tight end in this class, because having Cody Hardy on the field is like having a sixth offensive lineman. I mean, he just moved people all year for NC State, was a huge blocker. Well, wasn't the best receiver. Nobody that's 270 pounds is. He kind of reminds me of Jack Hawes from last year, where, the 270 tight end that went to the Bills and is just a reliable tight end too for the Bills, but they throw him out there and it's a huge advantage in the run game. It's really hard to prepare for the type of plays you're going to run out there when you have a guy like that on the field. So Cody Hardy is somebody that I like to mention, just as he's going to go earlier than you think for a team that just wants another guy that they can throw on the field to be a big time blocker, but also has the potential to catch some passes.
Yeah, I have a good Jackson Hawes stat if you want it. You ready?
Yeah.
All right.
I'm ready for it.
Since 2018, there's only 7 tight ends that have had a run blocking grade of 75 or more, a missed tackle rate of 8%, and a yards after catch per reception rating of at least 7.5. Carson Ryan is one of those 7 tight ends, along with Mark Andrews, Jackson Hawes, Darnell Washington, Kenyon Sadiq, Dawson Knox, and Harold Fannin Jr. That is good company to be in for Carson Ryan, who is my tight end 10. I would love to talk about him. He's a little under, not the biggest height. He's 6'3", but he's 255 pounds. Really, really good run blocker, and he's good, just kind of leaking out of in line and making plays in the passing game. Carson Ryan is just, he's one of those guys that's going to be, we talk about the tight end two so much on this episode. We're going to keep talking about it, but man, he is just pure tight end two. He's getting his nose dirty in the run game. He's, and again, after the catch, like that stat that I just shared, was mostly an after the catch stat. So he's a guy who has some wiggle after the catch, even though he's not the most athletic guy in the world. He is getting upfield, he's getting extra yards, and he's making plays. So Carson Ryan from BYU is a guy I wanted to talk about.
He's going to be the guy Andy Reid goes after if he's looking for a tight end too. You're talking about a BYU dude who loves to block, get his nose dirty, get in there and make things happen. That's the tight end too that Andy Reid will look for in round 5, considering his relationship with their coaching staff and all that stuff. But
one dude,
Jackson Hawes too last year was top 10 in the NFL in run block attempts. Okay, so he was like you mentioned, they got him on the field, like he is on the field like a lot.
Yeah.
So this dude is just.
There was a reason James Cook had such a good year with rushing efficiency. Right, that's not just Spencer Brown and Deion Dawkins. Jackson Hawes had a tremendous amount to do with that. Absolutely.
Yeah, that's exactly what I talk about when I talk about Cody Hardy, saying that's exactly what he'll bring to an NFL team, is that style of play where you don't get any of the recognition, but you result in a lot of the results.
Yeah, so nobody's mentioned Daquan Wright from Ole Miss. Raj, where do you have Daquan Wright?
Yeah, Daquan Wright. I was just saying, we're talking about so many of these blocking guys. How about a little bit of the opposite of that? Daquan Wright, I think, could really be a matchup problem in the NFL on, some downs. He's a fast guy. He's great after the catch. I think he's the best yards after catch tight end in the class, probably second to Kenyon Sadiq. But you look at him he can't block all that well, but he's lining up all over the field. He's running pretty elementary routes, but he's doing it really well. There are a lot of guys when Ole Miss was playing him, they just couldn't really cover him with 255. He's running up the field so fast. He's stretching the field vertically. Yeah, that's a guy I like. He's going to be around my tight end 10 when I finish out the class.
Jim, the reason why that Wright didn't have enough production is because of our guy, Dazon Stribling, wide receiver.
Well, and they had a quarterback issue and they switched head coaches, and that's not going to do favors for either Stribling or Wright.
And Lane Kiffin himself does not do favors for just about any of his players as far as NFL scouting goes, because his offenses make it really difficult to evaluate what a player will do in the NFL because of how wildly different his offenses are compared to the NFL. I mean, was a huge part of like the gripe around Jackson Dart last year. It was the reason why Matt Corral wasn't even considered up at the high ends of the draft. And we see it with the receivers all the time. We see it with their running backs. We see it, all that good stuff. Ole Miss is one of those schools that like you go to if you want to win a good bit of college football games and then blow it in the playoffs or maybe upset somebody. But they're not going to getting you to the league. Playing for Lane Kiffin is a tough way to go about it.
Yeah, I mean, he was running a lot of elementary routes at Ole Miss, but maybe he's a great route runner. Like, I don't think we really know all that well. So, he's a guy, I know that he's fast. I know that he can make guys miss in the open field, and he's hard to bring down. So maybe he is a great route runner.
My only knock on him, and I don't even want to call it a knock, is just the contested catch. Otherwise, I mean, he's certainly got enough functional strength. I love the multi-sport athletes, especially tight ends that have played basketball.
But he only did the contested catches so much. I mean, Lane Kiffin runs so much of like a one read offense where it's like hit your out route, hit your in route, or move on and run. Like, so it not a ton of opportunity for that either, which is part of what I mean when it's just tough to evaluate those types of guys.
Ryan, we were talking about Ole Miss.
We're talking about Ole Miss, man.
Yeah, Ryan, that was hysterical. Okay, so here's a wild question. Does anybody have a Michigan tight end in their top 15? So, Steve, which Michigan tight end do you have in your top 15?
So we're going to turn it over to the German import known as Marlon Klein. I think I remember that we started talking about him probably in summer scouting. EJ is always great about coming up with the summer list and everything. But, so before I'm talking about like Sadiq Size and some of these other guys, I mean, Marlon Klein, that to me is a good old school tight end, right? 6'6". Started with the Cologne Crocodiles in Germany. And then he moved to, what was the name of the school in Georgia? I can't remember it off the top for high school. Anyway, his strength is certainly in my eyes is just an elite blocker. Team captain, honorable mention in the Big Ten. Certainly stepped up when the Bears took Colston Loveland. Not very experienced, obviously, right, in terms of American football. Didn't have a lot of production, but he's put together some good games. So I think he is 13 or 14 for me, but I'm glad you brought it up. Taylor, what do you got on Klein?
I have him at 18, and I remember we looked at him earlier in the year, and I just watched him. I mean, I think the growth is there. But the growth is like here. So like I have him as like one of my highest upside players, but that in my model, that didn't necessarily translate to a top 15 tight end in the class. I have him as tight end.
I got to ask you, is that a shin angle that we just saw?
I don't know. Wherever this is on the point, he can go here, but he's only here right now. So I think that's my thing for him. My biggest thing was like in the receiving game, if he's not seeing it directly face to face, like he really struggles with it. So whether he's going out or even in, like he's good up the seam and he's good on kind of like curl routes or whatever in the middle of the field. If he's not looking directly at the quarterback, it's tough for him sometimes. And that was really my one note on him. But I like his upside. I just don't know necessarily, where that translates. Maybe in the 5th round, someone wants to take a swing on him. I'm totally fine with that.
Okay. So does anybody have Max Bredesen from Michigan in their top 20?
I
So
I
he
had
would be
Klein.
a
Fullback.
Yeah, I have him as a fullback, and I had Klein slotted at 15 on the dot. So
Got it. So Max Bredesen, you get a shout out, probably a fullback. But Buffalo, we have our eye on fullbacks. We have one that we like a little bit more than Bredesen.
Riley Nowakowski.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, from Indiana.
Yeah.
So Raj, do you have any other tight ends on your board that you like that we haven't talked about yet?
Yeah, the guy from Texas A&M, Bo Kircher. I'm probably butchering that. I liked him. He's thin. I think he's like 245, but he can block guys, and you see him, especially when he gets like the initial momentum with them and he gets them on the move. He might have had the most pancake blocks out of this class. So again, you're looking for a guy who can do a job where you can put him in a situation where he's winning reps. That's a guy that's probably 5th, 6th round. That's one I'd look at.
yeah, he's a well-rounded player in a Texas A&M offense that needed a reliable type of guy. Casey Concepcion is a great playmaker with the ball in his hands, and oh my gosh, Mario Craver is another really skilled receiver. Texas A&M had 3 really strong receivers, but all of them were relatively thin, not super like physically winning guys. I mean, Borkercher really owned the middle of the field for them. That was something that was so reliable for them all year.
Yeah, so we got 4 different tight ends being mentioned in the chat. Does anybody have anything on Koziel, Maryland, or Hibner or Rohan?
I'll start with Maryland. I think probably all of us have things on Koziel, but I'll start with Maryland. Obviously, NFL genes. Russell Maryland. 3-time Super Bowl champion with the Cowboys. He's in the College Football Hall of Fame. I think Maryland has the most yardage by a tight end in SMU history. 17 career touchdowns. I think he's got very reliable hands. Going through my notes, Wake Forest, Syracuse games, this past season, as well as a game against Nevada last year. That was probably one of his best games. Unfortunately, lost some time with the ACL. But yeah, in terms of just areas for him to develop is really just, is in terms of the blocking game. That's about it. I do have him as a late day 3, so I have a draftable grade on him. Any of you other guys have anything on Maryland or want to take on Matt Hibner?
All 3 of those guys come in as late day 3 guys for me. Koziel is a taller, thin tight end, plays a little tall. That's kind of the same issue I had with Klein, that they're playing high. But I mean, when you get to this point, we're talking about guys that are all tight end 2, tight end 3s. They're all going to have their own individual flaws. You can kind of work an offense with those guys. RJ Maryland and Matthew Hibner were, both tight ends at SMU. Maryland played off the line of scrimmage a lot more. If he's going to be an NFL tight end, somebody needs to get that man a protein shake. And Matt Hibner he's a skilled inline tight end. Again, protein shake, 245, not exactly what I look for in a tight end. 225 is definitely not what I look for in a tight end. Probably caused me to miss on Arondre Gadsden last year, but that's okay. Tough to make that work. That's an exception to the rule in general. One other guy that I want to throw out there in the conversation that's kind of like a smaller, not a smaller player, but less talked about guy is Chamon Metier from Arizona State. I like him a lot, 260 pounds, 6'4", really stocky. Another one of those guys that's similar to what I mentioned with Sam Roush, similar to what I mentioned when I talk about, oh my gosh, I'm blanking on his name, Cody Hardy, and the other like blocking tight ends that I mentioned above. Metier is a really reliable 6'4", 260, stocky blocker, strong on that offensive line, and when he plays in line, you can run pretty much your entire offensive playbook with a guy like that.
Yep. I have how do you pronounce it? Metier?
I think it's Metier.
Okay. Well, I have him as
Yeah.
my tight end 15. So I'm right there with you on that. I think he's a solid tight end, really good blocker, really good frame too. So I like him. Nobody's talked about Tanner Koziol yet, so I'll do it. I'm gonna guess based on the reaction from this crew, I'm way the highest on Tanner Koziol. I have him as tight end 7. He's the only player in my top 20 we haven't talked about, I think. But he has just such a good frame. I actually think this would be a perfect replacement. And correct me if I'm wrong, Matt, but if I'm a Broncos fan, I would hate him to go to Kansas City because that to me is such an ideal replacement for Kelsey. I think Kelsey's much better run blocker. Koziol can't run block hardly at all, but I like what he can do from a size perspective. And then from a skill perspective, like he had at one point, and I know it's Ball State, but he had 18 touchdowns in 22 career games right prior to this last season. And then I think my biggest thing is like the way he works over the middle of the field. He had 21 targets over the middle of the field. So between 10 and 19 yards, he caught 16 of them for 6 touchdowns. So he's really effective over the middle of the field. And specifically over the middle of the field. 39 of his 50, he caught 39 passes on 50 targets over the middle of the field. So I think the way he works the middle of the field is just a weapon, and that's someone that's going to make an impact on an offense, whether that's in the red zone. He's not going to block for you. I'm thinking like Mike Gesicki kind of vibes. I actually have him as a late day 2, early day 3 grade, and just outside my top 5 of tight ends, but I like his game.
I only have a tough time with him to the Chiefs because of his tweener kind of size and play style. He's like has the size that you want for a blocking tight end at 6'6" with plenty of length, and then he plays like he's 6'3". I want to see you throw around 6'6". Like he's moving like he's a big slot, but he's too big to be a big slot in the NFL, which is kind of just like I think at least for Andy Reid's type of offense, that's a tough sell.
Yeah. Oh, I get that. So wait, okay. So then from a scheme fit perspective, we've talked about almost 20 players for you that of all these teams, of all of our fandoms, right? Either the Chiefs or the Broncos probably need a tight end the most. What is your best landing spot to Kansas City and why?
I would love Max Clare if he falls into the 3rd round or something like that. I don't think he gets there. I think when you get lower in the draft, Jack Endries is like, Travis Kelce light, 0, no calories, because of just the way that, Travis Kelce has made a living off of owning zone coverage, just sitting between linebackers and tight ends, or not tight ends, corners, safeties, and just not running the route that he's assigned and just sitting in a gap. I think that, Jack Endries brings just that to a team. He's not going to be the run blocker. He's not going to be as skilled with the ball in his hands, but I think that's like I don't see the Chiefs spending one of their top 50 picks on a tight end. I just don't think it happens. I don't even know that they spend a 3rd round pick on a tight end. So I think you're looking at Jack Endries in that area. They still have Noah Gray on the roster, who Chiefs fans seem to despise for whatever reason. I'm not quite that against Noah Gray, but I think you look at him and a couple of other guys in that area. I kind of scroll down. There's nobody that I really love for the Chiefs. I think it's more of a matter of who falls, because one of these guys is going to get lower than they should be.
Yeah.
And one of the things that should be reminded for anybody watching this is that tight end is not a fantasy football position. It's an NFL position. And it is one of the slowest positions to develop, possibly with the only other position being quarterback that takes longer. So one of the reasons, like, we can talk about 20 tight ends, most of which are going to go in day 3, is that's how NFL teams get built. If you're a day 1 or a day 2 tight end, you're doing something very special in the passing game, right? If you're just a blocker, maybe you go towards the back half of round 3. If you're just going to be that Dawson Knox type tight end that only gets 25 catches but blocks his ass off. So I think most of these tight ends, I think we talked about it earlier, that there's going to be a run on tight ends from probably 90 to 140. It's going to be late round 3, round 4, round 5. You're going to see a lot of these guys come off the board Because if a team needs to fill a roster spot at tight end, they'll
Yeah.
do it on day 3, and then the player gets 3 years.
I'll
Yeah.
throw one thing out there, Taylor. Joe Royer is the other guy that I would mention. Cincinnati one would be Travis Kelce. Make him quite happy to see another Cincinnati tight end. And I think he'd work well with them.
Yeah.
But Taylor,
that's-
who's your dream for Denver?
Well, on my board, I have Raritan and Roush 3-4, and I just think a tight end with that kind of size is the piece that we're kind of missing right now. I know we've re-signed Adam Troutman, but he's not the best blocker in the world. He's all right, despite what Adam Schefter may say, or whoever tweeted out that contract that we got, right? But then we have Evan Ingram, who's pushing 30 and obviously is not in that role. So we really took a shot on Caleb Lohner from Utah a couple years ago, 6'7" tight end who might get some play, but we had to sign Mercedes Lewis in the middle of last season. He's 41, he was 41 years old. We got to go in some younger direction at tight end. And I think for me, I want to get one of these big bodied receivers that can work the middle of the field. Just help Bo Nix out. And so I would say Raritan and Roush. And then if I have to pick a later guy, I like Metier as well. And then I wouldn't mind taking a swing on Marlon Klein. I just think the Broncos will use significant draft capital. I think we have a couple picks in the 4th round now. So I wouldn't be surprised to see him use a 4th rounder on a tight end.
If you guys land Sam Roush and I watch him get upfield and pancake the living crap out of Alohi Gilman, I might cry.
That's a dream. That's a dream.
Raj, do you have a tight end that you think would fit within Washington, like either late? Like, I don't know what the roster need is, but is there a tight end that you like?
Yeah, the room right now is pretty solid. We signed Chigakonkwo, who, I think is a viable starter, and then you have John Bates behind him, who's an excellent blocker, and the team likes him. And then Ben Sinnott, we just drafted a couple years ago with some pretty high capital. So I would be surprised to see them go tight end. I don't really know what David Blau's system is going to look like, so I can't even really speculate about who would fit into that. But I mean, there's a lot of these guys on the board where any team would benefit from having them in the tight end room, because we've talked about how reliable they are and the way that they can block, and they do offer some value to every team. So there could certainly be a guy they take who's fallen down the board in rounds 5, 6, or 7, but I don't think it's a pressing need right now.
And Steve, the Jets need everything. Do they need 2 of these guys or just 1?
Well, pick your poison. Last year in the 2nd round, they took Mason Taylor. He was okay. I'm a little concerned he did miss time with a neck injury that they just said was not serious. But I heard that once before about Quincy Enunwa. So we'll see what happens with that. I think the issue, there with Taylor is just the coaching is just so god awful that can't really see the upside of what he is. And then they just extended him, Jeremy Ruckert from the Ohio State University. Yep. Brian, I see your comment. Of course, I'm always going to plug the Buckeyes. Anyway, but he's more, even when they took him, it was a different regime. It was Saleh. And I saw him more in that, Kyle Juszczyk kind of role. His hands are okay. And who's the other guy they had? They brought him in. Jelani Woods. Yeah. And he was inactive the whole time, but they threw some money at him, to stick around. So, I mean, you're right, Jim. We need everything. It kills me when I see what happened with Harold Fannin, who was the guy that I really wanted last year. But I said at the top of the show, I do not want to consider defense twice in the 1st round. It's 16. I'm willing to go receiver, but my second choice would be Sadiq, and I'd be dancing.
I have a question. So how many tight ends do you guys have with draftable grades in this class? And how many of them are outside of or in day 3? Because I have 30 draftable tight ends. And I have only 4 that I would take before day 3. I think that's like an odd disparity compared to like other positions,
Well,
things like that.
and
That reminds me of how I grade running backs, which
no,
is crazy to think.
yeah, but Matt, you're leading into a point, which is going to be how I was going to kind of close this down and summarize it. We could be seeing a historic draft in that more tight ends will get drafted than running backs. And the last time that happened, I think Taylor, you were the one that
2010, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I wrote about it. Yeah, 2010 was the last time. So that's likely gonna happen. And I looked at it because I was like, oh, it must have been a bad running back class. Well, 3 running backs went in the top 30 picks of that class. So I was like, that's crazy. But yeah, 27 tight ends were invited to the NFL Combine, only 21 running backs. Thus tipping me off to this being a possibility. But yeah, 2010, it's crazy that it's been since 2010, but just kind of interesting. The last time there were more tight ends drafted, teams started passing the ball more than 60% of the time. So frequently. It hit an all-time like 22-year high in 2014. 15 different teams are throwing the ball 60 or more percentage of the time. And that number has dwindled all the way down to less than 5 since 2014, and it keeps going down. So it's kind of getting balanced. People are running the ball more. I think it's weird to say. The reason and the shift for needing to run the ball more actually allows for more tight ends to be drafted than running backs. It's easier to find a running back like George Halani in free agency that can beat out a running back that you drafted in the 7th round in Damian Martinez because of his special team skills. And now teams are keeping 4 tight ends instead of 4 running backs. So they're only keeping 3 running backs. One of those running backs is essentially assigned to kick return duty and maybe like 2-minute offense, maybe 4-minute offense, whatever that looks like. So tight ends are going to be, I don't think this is a trend that's necessarily going to stop. I could see this happening multiple times over the next 5 years.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
Well,
Matt, to your question, I've got 24 draftable grades, and I have I have 15 of those 24 on day 3.
Yeah,
you have
not.
9 on day 1 and 2.
Well, day 2 mostly. I only have 1 on day
But
1.
that would
Yeah.
still be, but 9 in the top 100
Yeah.
is still feels like it's high. I think you're high within this group of 5.
I have
Probably.
6. I have 6 in my top 100.
I have 4. I have 26 day 3 grades for tight ends and 4 in the first 2 days.
I have 4 in the first 2 days as well. I don't know how many I'll have a draftable grade on because I still have a few guys to get to. Probably around, I'd imagine 20 to 25.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's
I have a
just an absurd
question.
number.
Matt, are any of the draftable grades Lance Mason of Wisconsin or DJ Rogers from TCU?
DJ Rogers is a yes. DJ Rogers is 23rd, and Lance Mason is the first priority free agent.
Got it. Okay. Did Jaron Kanak from Oklahoma make the list of draftable?
Yes, but with a strong asterisk of like, you're gonna want to figure this guy out. You're gonna have to know how well he knows an offense. He's gonna have to learn an offense. You're gonna have to be patient with a linebacker transitioning. And 6'2", 230 pounds screams fullback to me. So I'm not sure how much he stays as like a true tight end.
Well, and that's why I wanted to drop his name. So Jaron Kanak, tight end from Oklahoma, is a name for people who follow the draft to consider, because I think what makes him draftable, he's going to be able to be a 4-phase special team player for you. Guaranteed, you're going to be able to dress him on Sundays. The problem is he's a linebacker that converted to tight end at Oklahoma. And he's, like, as Matt pointed out, he doesn't have the prototypical size. He's only 6'2", I think 220, in that range. So you're either going to need him to slot wide receiver, fullback, but the likelihood he plays more than 5 plays of offense a game for you, I think, is low. But he's going to be able to contribute to your roster, which is why he's going to get drafted.
Yeah, he's a long-term special teamer, and if you put him at fullback, I form, and just tell that guy to run forward and tackle the dude in front of him without grabbing him, He might
Yep.
block pretty well. I mean, like that's like he's not afraid to get himself dirty. He was linebacker. He'll hit.
Well, why don't we wrap the podcast up? Raj, it's definitely been a while since we've had you on a podcast. You want to introduce yourself to everybody? Let them know who you are and how they can find you.
Sure, yeah, I'm Raj. I'll be Raj Draft on X. So you can go follow me there. I do NFL and NBA draft content. I'm a Commanders and Grizzlies fan. So yeah.
Matt.
Yeah, Chabot Sports. That's my last name. Chabot with a T at the end and a CH in the beginning. I hope you can figure out the BO in the middle. And that's about it. Chabot Sports, where you're going to find me. I'm at Arrowhead Addict. I do some podcasting there pretty rarely, but for the most part, I write articles. They're going to be informative for pretty much all teams because they're write-ups about players. I specifically focus on their fit with the Chiefs, but you'll get to learn something about players that you may not know or you may already know, but you don't know how they fit with a different type of offense, and you may learn a thing or two. So check it out over there. It's a great site. My coworker and I, Price, cover a lot of NFL draft stuff over at Arrowhead Addict. So feel free to check that out.
Well, Chaw.
Yeah, you can find my stuff, Football with Chaw, and then you see my X handle down there in the small white font. So, yeah, I'm kind of new to this draft process stuff, so I'm just kind of building out my board for the first time and my kind of ranking model, which focuses a lot on film, but also on production and, athleticism, things like that, to kind of finalize my rankings, as most boards do. But this will be the first time I have a full, 300 players. I've never had that before. So on YouTube as well, Football with Chaw. Follow. Been writing some random stuff about tight ends and running backs and kick return rules and all sorts of stuff. So what about you, Steve?
Yeah. So the center of everything is right here. There's a link tree there. It'll get you to the YouTube channel as well as the Substack, which I finally got going again. Also involved with Jetcast on Twitter as well as YouTube. On the weekends, I've had a bunch of draft professors stop by our Twitter space or X, whatever you want to call it. It's called The Huddle, 8 a.m. Eastern, Saturdays and Sundays. We usually bring in some guests. We've been blessed to have some of the draft professors stop in, and more will be coming. Just a few other plugs. I'll be back here tomorrow night right around this time, I believe, with Matt. We'll be covering the Friday night draft professor 3-round mock. So, what better way to spend your Friday night, but, cuddled up with Jim, Matt, and I, and, 32 GMs. And then coming up 2 weeks from tonight, not to steal your thunder, Jim, but it's a big night. Epic Mock 26 kicks off. Hashtag Epic Mock 26. 32 draft professors will be podcasting against each other. I will be running the war room for the Jets on my channel at Steve_NFL, and can't wait, man. Can't wait.
Yeah, if you tune in tomorrow on Friday and watch Steve and I cover the draft professor mock draft, you have the potential of seeing Matt have a brain hemorrhage if somebody takes the Chiefs offensive tackle in the first round. So feel free to come enjoy that.
I just had this conversation today with my dad because we were talking about that, and I was like, I don't think they're going to go tackle. I don't think Jalen Moore is as bad as everyone thought, and they were so injured last year.
I'm actually scared they're going to go tackle, and I think they shouldn't, and I am terrified that they will.
All right, well, let me ask you this real quick, Matt, because I asked my dad this too. What if all the top 3 edge rushers are gone, and let's just say Carnell Tate goes to the Browns or something, and Caleb Downs is off the board? What like in this scenario, what are you going to do at 9? Because I know you want
literally
edge.
If anybody offers us a bag of Doritos, we trade down.
That would make sense, but no one's trying to leap the Bills or the Bengals because their pick is going to be messed up anyway, most likely.
I'll take anything. 6th round pick, half a tank of gas. I don't care.
Yeah, but you agree with me? Then that's worst case scenario, right? That is absolute worst case scenario.
Caleb Downs, no edge rushers and no receiver is a terrifying scenario. Yeah, if Carnell Tate's off the board,
They can get Mansour Delane or Jermod McCoy there.
True.
You ever seen a grown man cry, Jim?
Well, Matt knows how I feel about when you trade away a player and then you just go and reinvest in the same position, but
Oh,
at
you
a
have no
higher
idea.
pick.
You have no idea. the
I-
things that
I have a real
I will go
problem with that.
unhinged on the internet if we draft a corner with that pick.
Oh, I'm here for it. I want to take a few minutes and just thank first Raj, Matt, Steve, and Taylor for being here. We can't put this content out without them. I do also want to announce 3 different mock drafts the draft professors are doing. Steve mentioned Epic Mock 26, but we've got 2 that are going to happen before that. So next, starting on Saturday morning, we're going to do our first marathon mock. So a marathon mock is when one podcast does round 1, the next podcast does round 2, the next podcast does round 3, and by the time we get to Sunday night, they're going to do rounds 4 and 5. So we're going to do a marathon mock over the weekend. Then on Monday, we're just going to reset it back to 0, and the Monday podcast is going to do round 1. The Tuesday podcast is going to do round 2. One of the Wednesday podcasts does round 3. One of the Wednesday podcasts does round 4, which takes me to Thursday. Shaw, Matt, and Steve will be doing rounds 5 and 6 of that mock. And wherever we end. And then EJ picks up the draft. It is 9 o'clock and finishes it out through round 7. So the advantage of that is we're draft professors. Our boards are deep. You heard Shaw talk about 300. I could tell that Matt's got a deep board if he has 30 tight ends graded, right? Steve, very big board. He's been podcasting since September on the draft with us, as has Taylor, right? So draft professors have big boards. We will show them off to you if you follow the right podcast and find out who's got where in round 3 and who's going where in round 4. We're going to be talking about that for the next week. And then, as Steve pointed out, we have Epic Mock 26, which is 32 podcasters mock drafting against 32 podcasters. Every podcaster is going to be in their own feed. So you'll be able to hear why Steve made his picks. You'll be able to hear why Jerry Ostrowski made those picks for the Bills, right? And so you get to follow your favorite draft professors. You can go check out 33 different podcasts, all talking about the same players, and decide whose opinion you agree with or disagree with. That's what we do. So we do have another podcast that's coming up in 50 minutes. So EJ and company will be here for Raj, Matt, Steve, Taylor, myself, and the 85 podcasters. That's Draft Professor. Thank you so much for tuning in. The chat was awesome today, guys. Thank you so much for stopping by. We'll see you on a podcast in 50 minutes. Thank you, everybody.